The orbiting station above Earth's moon hummed softly, its massive solar arrays capturing the distant warmth of the sun. Dr. Viral, chief medical observer of the Zalorian Scientific Order, moved gracefully along the pristine corridors, his layered exoskeleton glinting under the ambient luminescent panels. Every motion was calculated, deliberate, a product of a species that had never known true unconsciousness. To a Zalorian, the concept of sleep was an enigma bordering on madness. Their kind operated under continuous vigilance, a seamless thread of awareness from inception to the final cessation of life. Every biological function was monitored, every sensory input analyzed. Fatigue was an alien concept, mental quietude, a mechanical impossibility. Yet here he was, staring at the holoscreen projecting Earth in vivid detail. Dr. Viral's antennae twitched involuntarily. He had been observing humans for cycles, isolated satellites capturing their nocturnal patterns, data streams analyzed by algorithms designed to detect anomalies. And what he saw baffled him. Night on Earth was a global symphony of inactivity. Humans would collapse into a state of near-total immobility. Heart rates slowed, cortical activity fell into irregular rhythms, muscles went slack and breathing became shallow. 4 hours, entire populations surrendered themselves to a process that, to a Zalorian, resembled death rehearsal. The first report, typed carefully in his precise script, was simple: species voluntarily enters systemic shutdown. Survival improbable. Duration of vulnerability extensive. He had sent it to the Council of the Observers. The reply had been terse: continue monitoring. Avoid interference. Record anomalies. Dr. Viral studied the live feed of a single household in the Northern Hemisphere. A human male, mid-20s, reclined on a soft surface, his chest rising and falling in the shallow rhythm that marked deep sleep. His limbs were relaxed, unguarded, his skin pale in the dim glow of the bedside lamp. From the Zalorian perspective, this was an organism performing a series of suicidal maneuvers with astonishing regularity. Viral's specialized ocular lenses expanded, cycling through infrared, ultraviolet, and magnetic field scans. The human's brain activity entered the third stage of slumber, deep, slow-wave sleep. To the Zalorian mind, this was catastrophic. Neural signals dwindled to near silence, circulation slowed, and thermoregulation approached minimal thresholds. A biological collapse, voluntary, ritualized, and apparently fatal, occurred nightly. He tapped the console, overlaying the human's vitals against his species' baseline. The contrast was staggering. In a Zalorian, cortical activity never dips below 92% efficiency. Muscles retain microtension to maintain posture. Circulation never deviates beyond a 3% variance. Yet humans reduce themselves to near-zero systemic activity, returning unharmed each morning. This defies evolutionary logic, he whispered, his voice a low hum resonating from his thoracic cavity. Why would a species engineer such vulnerability? Why would they risk complete systemic failure nightly? The feed flickered and the human stirred. Eyes fluttered open, the movements slow, groggy, a yawning display that sent Viral's biometric sensors into overdrive. He could detect the surge in cortical activity, the sudden spike in metabolism, the restoration of circulatory function. Within minutes, the organism was alive again, alert, and seemingly unaware of the near-death rehearsal it had just endured. Viral recorded everything meticulously. Each rise and fall of the chest, each fluctuation in brainwave amplitude, each involuntary twitch of a digit was catalogued. His report began to include annotations: cyclic vulnerability observed. Systemic restoration occurs without external intervention. Unknown biochemical triggers active. Hours later, he accessed archived data from previous human cycles. Night after night, the pattern repeated: voluntary shutdown, near cessation, followed by automatic revival. He calculated the odds. Statistically, a species with such vulnerability should have ceased to exist long ago. Yet here they were, thriving, expanding, adapting. The Zalorian Council had warned him against interference. But curiosity gnawed at him. What mechanisms allowed humans to survive a process that logically should have ended them? Could this vulnerability be a hidden strength, a form of resilience beyond Zalorian comprehension? He initiated a protocol of closer observation. Small drones, silent and invisible to human perception, were deployed to monitor neural and physiological responses in multiple subjects. The data streamed back to his console in torrents of numbers and waveforms. What he discovered next challenged everything he thought he knew about life. During the third stage of sleep, the human brain performed remarkable feats. Memory consolidation, emotional processing and problem-solving occurred simultaneously. Dreams, chaotic, nonsensical, bizarre, were not random. They were neurological exercises, simulations of risk, stress testing of cognitive and emotional pathways. Humans were voluntarily subjecting themselves to temporary death-like states to strengthen resilience. Viral's thoracic hum deepened. The logic of the process was staggering. In a single nightly session, humans lowered metabolic activity, reduced circulatory output, and entered a state of paralysis while maintaining an almost imperceptible level of neural activity dedicated to system diagnostics. The body repaired microdamage, the mind processed experience, and yet the organism remained intact. Alive. Functional. Superior in its adaptability to any threat, internal or external. "What are you doing?" a soft synthesized voice asked from behind him. It was his assistant, Dr. Lyric, a junior Zalorian observer. She hovered near the console, her segmented limbs folding in a gesture of attention. "Humans sleep," Viral replied. "They descend into what we would define as biological cessation, and yet they survive. Unharmed. Rejuvenated. Each night, they perform a near-death ritual as routine maintenance." Lyric's ocular sensors widened, the equivalent of a gasp. "And they do this voluntarily?" "Yes. They surrender control to their biology. They trust it to restore them. Entire species survival depends on it." The two observers fell silent, studying the projected image of Earth as darkness swept across continents. Thousands of humans in thousands of locations were engaged in the same nightly act. A species that had mastered chaos, vulnerability, and regeneration simultaneously. Viral leaned closer to the console. He adjusted the magnification on one human subject, a young woman in a dimly lit bedroom. Her vitals plummeted as she entered deep sleep. Her heart rate slowed, respiration dropped to a shallow rhythm, and yet her brain exhibited bursts of rapid eye movement, simulations of activity that seemed impossible in a near-paralyzed state. "It's deliberate," he whispered almost to himself. "Every species evolves for survival. But humans evolve for resilience through controlled vulnerability. They risk death to ensure life." A sudden alert flashed on his interface. A minor anomaly, CO2 levels spiked in the monitored room, likely a sign of sleep apnea. Viral initiated corrective protocols, adjusting oxygen levels remotely. The human's vitals normalized within minutes. He observed closely as she shifted, yawned, and eventually awakened, completely unharmed. Viral documented it all. Every night would be recorded, every cycle analyzed. The council would want the raw data. But more importantly, he needed to understand the how behind the miracle. How could a species so fragile on the surface survive such extreme vulnerability? How could they return from the brink of death with such reliability? "This is unprecedented," he muttered. "A species that thrives because it surrenders, trusts, and allows the impossible to occur." Lyric watched him, her segmented fingers tapping a rhythm on the console. "Do you think they know how extraordinary they are?" Viral did not answer. His attention remained fixed on the screen. Each night, each sleep cycle, humans performed a ritual that defied Zalorian logic, philosophy, and biology. Yet here they were, alive, functional, and utterly human. For the first time in his long career, Viral felt something unfamiliar, a deep, silent awe. A species could teach even the most advanced observer that vulnerability was not weakness. That trust in one's own system, even to the brink of collapse, could be the very essence of survival. And so, orbiting the moon, he watched. And he wondered, how had they survived so long and what else could they teach him about life? The hum of the station pulsed around him. Outside, Earth rotated silently. Inside, Dr. Viral made a silent vow. He would understand the miracle of human sleep, no matter how long it took. And in the quiet of the observation room, as humans slept unaware, a Zalorian learned the first lesson in humility. The orbital station above Earth had grown quiet. Outside, the void stretched endlessly, punctuated only by the distant flicker of stars. Inside, Dr. Viral's medbay hummed with the soft resonance of active systems. Each sensor and console aligned perfectly, calibrated to detect even the smallest anomaly in human physiology. Tonight he would observe a human up close. Not through satellites, not through distant sensors, but within the controlled environment of the station itself. The human, a volunteer named Marcus Lyle, had been briefed. Monitoring only, no interference unless absolutely necessary. Marcus was unprepared for what awaited him. To a human, the station seemed vast, sterile, and impossibly quiet. To a Zalorian observer, it was a sanctuary of precision, designed to capture the miracle of life in motion and in stillness. Dr. Viral entered the observation chamber, his multiple eyes scanning Marcus from head to toe. Every detail was captured. Micromuscle contractions, the faint oscillation of pulse waves across capillaries, the irregular but purposeful flickers of neural activity. Marcus moved with casual curiosity, unaware that he was about to become the subject of a study that could redefine the Zalorian understanding of biology. "You understand the protocol," Viral's resonant voice intoned. "You will rest. I will monitor. Only deviations beyond safe thresholds will prompt intervention." Marcus nodded, adjusting his sleeping quarters, a surprisingly small bunk for someone accustomed to gravity-based Earth sleeping norms. "Sure. I just go to sleep, right?" he asked, smiling faintly. "Nothing fancy." Viral's antennae twitched in approval. "Correct. Your species' simplicity is remarkable." Marcus laid down, the soft surface embracing him. The lights dimmed, though never fully extinguished. Zalorian sensors required a constant baseline of illumination, calibrated to detect the subtlest thermal and kinetic signatures. Marcus exhaled, letting the unconscious rituals begin. A slight stretch and adjustment of limbs, the closing of eyelids over orbs that would soon dream. Viral activated the suite of biotrackers. Graphs, heat maps, and neural scans blossomed across the medbay consoles. The human's pulse began its slow descent, respiration shallowed, and brainwaves shifted toward the characteristic slow-wave patterns. "This is the phase of maximum vulnerability," Viral murmured. "Circulatory function reduced. Neuromuscular output near zero. Yet survival persists." Hours passed. The human's vitals dipped into ranges that any other species would not survive. Muscles slackened entirely, pulse slowed to the threshold of detection, and respiration approached the minimum sustainable level. Viral sensors detected microcorrections, tiny fluctuations the human body used to stabilize the collapse. "It is astonishing," Viral whispered to himself. "A voluntary surrender of systemic function, yet a preservation of life. The body's control systems operate autonomously, beyond conscious influence." The first anomaly occurred as Marcus entered rapid eye movement (REM) sleep. Neural activity surged, but the body remained paralyzed, a paradoxical state that Viral recorded meticulously. The human brain simulated full consciousness while the body remained inert. He had seen glimpses of this through distant observation, but now the subtle choreography of cells and circuits was laid bare. "This is the true miracle," Viral said. "A species capable of conscious reconstruction while simultaneously halting the mechanisms that sustain life. It is a biological system performing self-diagnostics, repairs, and simulations under extreme risk conditions. And they do this nightly without fail." Hours later, Marcus twitched slightly. A low hum emanated from his chest as circulatory spikes occurred. Viral leaned forward, adjusting sensor sensitivity. He observed microcorrections in heart rate and neural oscillation, automatic responses the human body enacted to prevent true collapse. "You are managing risk instinctively," Viral muttered, fascinated. "Systems designed by evolution, yet executed with voluntary compliance." Suddenly, an alert flashed on his console. Marcus's oxygen saturation had dipped dangerously close to a threshold Viral had preset. In Zalorian terms, a code crimson, a life-threatening event. Without hesitation, Viral engaged the automated oxygen support, a soft current of enriched air directed at Marcus's nasal passages. The human inhaled, microcorrections stabilizing the system. Within minutes, vitals returned to normal ranges. "This is adaptive resilience," Viral murmured, documenting every detail. "A species evolving safety nets within the risk itself. Biological innovation disguised as fragility." Marcus stirred, rolling slightly, murmuring incoherently in his dreams. REM sleep intensified, and Viral sensors detected a surge in neuronal firing, an entire network of synapses executing simulations of hypothetical danger scenarios. The human subconscious mind was rehearsing possible futures, testing reactions to threats that never occurred. "It is training," Viral concluded. "The brain engages in iterative problem-solving while the body is immobilized. Sleep is not passive. It is a laboratory, a rehearsal, a controlled experiment in resilience." Hours bled into morning. Marcus awoke slowly, blinking, stretching, and yawning, a ritual that triggered a rapid restoration of cardiovascular and neural function. Viral's sensors recorded the surge of life, pulse spikes, brainwaves synchronizing, oxygen levels normalizing. The paradox was complete. Survival had been guaranteed, Yet the organism had voluntarily entered near-death states. Marcus looked at Viral, curious. Hey, did you watch the whole time? Viral's antennae twitched. Observation is the primary directive. Your species' method of survival is exceptional. Marcus laughed lightly, rubbing his eyes. Well, it's not exactly heroic. I just sleep. I guess it's weird to watch, huh? Not weird, Viral corrected. It is extraordinary. A species engineering survival through voluntary systemic surrender. You place yourself in danger nightly and emerge unscathed. This defies the logic of all known biological systems. Marcus tilted his head. So, you're impressed by me taking a nap? Viral's layered eyes focused. It is not mere rest. It is an act of resilience, adaptation, and trust in the body's autonomous capabilities. It is a marvel. The observation continued over multiple cycles. Each night, Marcus's body performed the same delicate balancing act. Entering deep sleep, navigating REM, micro-correcting for potential failure, and emerging restored. The Zilorian data grew exponentially, revealing patterns unseen from distant observation. Viral noted several critical discoveries. Autonomous neurological stabilization. Humans' bodies detect potential catastrophic failure and enact micro-corrections without conscious intervention. Paradoxical paralysis with active cognition. During REM, neural activity is high while motor systems remain immobilized, a risk mitigation strategy preventing accidental harm. Cyclic metabolic downshift. Energy expenditure drops significantly, allowing long-term restoration of cellular and neurological systems. Subconscious problem solving. Dreams function as iterative simulations for survival, emotional processing, and memory consolidation. This is the blueprint of survival in extremis, Viral whispered. A species thriving because it dares vulnerability, because it surrenders control, because it trusts itself to emerge. The human volunteer, oblivious to the magnitude of his actions, yawned again, preparing for another cycle. Viral documented, cross-referenced, and simulated future experiments. If humans could survive nightly near-death states, what else might their biology conceal? Could such resilience be applied in extreme space missions, hazardous planetary exploration, or prolonged isolation? Dr. Lyric entered, observing the data streams cascading across multiple consoles. Do you think this explains why humans are so successful? She asked quietly. Viral did not answer immediately. He watched Marcus curl under the blanket, preparing for the next cycle. Yes, he said finally. Success is not in strength or endurance alone. It is in voluntary surrender, in the trust that life can restore itself. The human species survives because it embraces vulnerability as a tool, not a weakness. The night deepened, and the station hummed in quiet harmony. Marcus slept, his body performing the dangerous ballet of near failure and recovery. Viral observed every heartbeat, every neural spike, every tiny fluctuation, recording the miracle that repeated endlessly across a species he had long underestimated. In the Zilorian medbay, awe settled like a heavy weight. Observation had become understanding, and understanding had become admiration. Humans, fragile and paradoxical, were mastering survival in ways Viral species had never conceived. For the first time he realized that the greatest strength of the human species was not in muscle, not in endurance, not in intellect alone. It was in trust, in oneself, in the body, in the unseen mechanics of life. And tonight, as Marcus breathed in the quiet darkness, that lesson unfolded with a clarity no Zilorian had ever witnessed before. The experiment of vulnerability had begun. And it would change everything they thought they knew about life, risk, and survival. The Erebor station's corridors were quiet, lit only by the steady glow of life support panels and navigational lights. Outside, the black expanse of space stretched endlessly, indifferent to the events unfolding within. Dr. Silent moved with precision, his layered eyes scanning the medbay monitors. Tonight, Marcus Lyle's sleep cycle would not be ordinary. Silent had been observing humans for weeks now. Each sleep cycle revealed a new paradox. Vulnerability entwined with resilience, systemic near-failure paired with automatic recovery, neurological activity thriving even when the body seemed lifeless. And yet, nothing had prepared him for what was about to occur. Marcus lay in his bunk, breathing slowly, eyes closed, entering deep slow-wave sleep. Vitals displayed a near-perfect decline toward what any other species would call terminal. The Zilorian sensors hummed, documenting every microbeat, every oscillation of brainwaves, every subtle fluctuation in blood pressure. Suddenly an anomaly occurred. A small irregularity in the cardiac signal, a microarrhythmia, appeared. It was tiny, almost imperceptible, but to Silen's trained senses, it was critical. "The heart is compensating," he murmured, leaning forward. "But this is beyond normal variation." He activated the supplemental oxygen dispenser, directing a soft flow toward Marcus's face. No response. The human's pulse dipped further, the irregularity widening. In any other species, this would have been fatal. Silen's internal hum increased in pitch, the Zilorian equivalent of alarm. "This is unprecedented," he whispered. "A true systemic collapse during voluntary rest. The organism is teetering on the edge." Silen's tentacles moved rapidly, engaging the station's automated life support overrides. Microcorrections in oxygen, temperature, and atmospheric pressure were deployed within seconds. Marcus twitched, a subtle reflex, but the irregular heartbeat persisted. "This is real," Silen murmured, a note of fear entering his normally calm tone. "The human is at risk. Yet, it is supposed to be safe." The anomaly intensified. Marcus's respiratory rhythm faltered, shallow gasps replacing the steady tide of oxygen exchange. His skeletal muscles remained slack, incapable of voluntary correction. Silent sensors recorded a rapid decline across every vital system. He reviewed the historical data of previous cycles. Each time, Marcus's body had corrected minor instabilities autonomously. But this was different. A compounded failure, cardiac, respiratory, and neurological systems teetering simultaneously. Silent had a choice. Intervene immediately, force the human awake, restore his vitals manually, and risk breaking the natural sleep process. Or observe, trusting the human body's legendary resilience, and hope it corrected itself in time. Protocol dictates observation until intervention threshold, he reminded himself, though the instinct to act surged. But thresholds must be recalibrated. Tonight, human biology exceeds expectation. Minutes passed. The vital graphs flattened, dipping toward the edge of what Silent species would define as death. Heartbeat sporadic, respiration nearly ceasing, neural activity a faint whisper. This is a rehearsal for death, and yet, Silent hesitated, recording every microsecond. It is voluntary. Yet voluntary risk has never looked so real. He engaged the emergency override. The oxygen dispenser increased output. Microjolts of electrical stimulation were prepared, calibrated to restart cardiac function without waking the patient fully. Each adjustment was delicate. Too strong and Marcus would awaken. Too weak and the human could fail entirely. Time slowed. Silen's eyes flicked between vitals, environmental monitors, and Marcus's inert form. The oxygen saturation dipped dangerously low. Silen made a calculated decision. Initiate a controlled intervention designed to mimic the body's natural recovery. A soft electrical pulse flowed through Marcus's chest muscles. Microcorrections in heart rhythm synchronized with neural impulses. Slowly, imperceptibly at first, the human's vitals began to recover. Pulse regained regularity, respiration deepened, and brain activity surged. Silen exhaled, a rare, conscious act of relief. But the crisis was far from over. Marcus's body was still fragile, systems on the edge, teetering between survival and failure. Every microcorrection had to be precise, guided by instinct and knowledge of the species' extraordinary resilience. Hours passed. Marcus remained unconscious, yet his body responded to Silen's interventions with subtle precision. Each heartbeat, each breath, each flicker of neural energy, followed patterns the Zilorian had never witnessed outside of simulations. "This is adaptation beyond comprehension," he whispered. "A species evolved to flirt with death nightly, yet emerge fully functional. Survival is encoded not just in physiology, but in the very practice of vulnerability." Finally, the human's vitals stabilized. Slowly, Silent disengaged the auxiliary systems, allowing Marcus to continue sleeping naturally. The irregularities resolved, and the slow-wave sleep cycle resumed its graceful descent. Silent stepped back, documenting every anomaly and correction. The lesson was clear. Human biology was both fragile and unbreakable, a paradox that challenged all Zilorian understanding. As dawn approached on the station's orbital clock, Marcus began to stir. His eyelids fluttered, brainwaves shifting toward wakefulness, cardiovascular function returning fully online. Silent monitored silently, noting the rapid surge of energy, the normalization of vitals, the subconscious restoration of systemic equilibrium. Marcus yawned, stretching as if nothing had occurred. "Morning already?" he muttered, oblivious to the near-fatal event he had just endured in sleep. Silen's layered eyes focused on the human. Your species survives by design, not merely by chance, he said softly. It is not weakness that allows continuation of life. It is voluntary surrender, trust in self-restoration, and a system evolved for controlled failure and recovery. Marcus blinked at him, confused. Yeah, I guess. I just sleep, document. That's all. You sleep, Silent corrected, but it is more than rest. It is a nightly rehearsal of resilience. A controlled flirtation with cessation. And each time you emerge unscathed. Marcus smiled faintly, oblivious to the magnitude of Silent's observations. Well, I guess humans are weird, he said. Silent's antennae twitched. Weird? No. Remarkable. Extraordinary. Adaptive. You survive where others would fail. You thrive because you dare vulnerability. Over the next cycles, Silent repeated the observation protocol. Each time he introduced minor, controlled stressors. Slight variations in atmospheric composition, micro-adjustments to temperature, and simulated minor cardiac irregularities. Marcus's body responded, correcting each challenge autonomously. It is learning, Silent realized. Not conscious, not voluntary in the sense of thought, but evolutionary, systemic learning encoded in the body itself. Sleep is both vulnerability and mastery. It is a laboratory of resilience. Weeks passed. Marcus's cycles became more predictable in their patterns, yet never entirely so. Each night introduced minor variations. Dreams of calculus teachers turned into sandwiches, imagined arguments, distant memories, and complex problem-solving simulations. The human brain rehearsed social interactions, survival scenarios, and emotional processing while the body remained inert. Silent documented everything meticulously, creating a comprehensive model of human resilience. Neural oscillations, cardiac microcorrections, respiratory patterns, muscular atonia, and subconscious problem-solving, all contributed to a coherent picture of extraordinary adaptability. This species survives by embracing vulnerability, Silent murmured. By surrendering control, trusting the unseen mechanisms of life, and daring the impossible every night. Finally, Marcus awoke fully rested, unaware of the crisis that had unfolded hours earlier. Silent observed quietly, marveling at the ease with which humans returned to normal function, their bodies perfectly restored. This is the essence of humanity, he whispered. Not strength alone, not intellect, but the courage to risk, the trust to surrender, and the capacity to recover fully again and again. As Marcus prepared for his daily duties aboard Erebor Station, Silent reflected on the implications. Humans were fragile by design, yet unbreakable by practice. They were paradoxical marvels, capable of thriving under conditions that would challenge even the most resilient alien species. And tonight, when Marcus returned to sleep, Silent would watch again, prepared to intervene if necessary, yet hopeful that the human body would continue its miraculous nightly cycle of controlled near-failure and spontaneous restoration. For the Zalorians, this was no longer merely observation. It was a lesson that life, survival, and resilience sometimes required surrender, trust, and a willingness to embrace the unknown. Days had passed since Marcus Lyle's near-fatal sleep cycle, and Erebor Station had settled into a quiet rhythm. But peace in deep space was always fragile, a temporary calm over chaos. Silent's layered eyes scanned the station schematics, noting minor vibrations in the primary coolant conduits. Normally, these would be insignificant, but he had learned to trust the subtle warnings of the human body. Tonight, Marcus's sleep cycle would coincide with the station's most delicate operation, a recalibration of the quantum communications array. Any disruption could cascade through multiple systems, triggering a full station emergency. And tonight, Silent feared the two might collide. Marcus entered his quarters, exhausted from a 12-hour maintenance shift. Sweat clung to his shirt as he removed tools from his belt. He glanced at the small green light of the biomonitor, unaware of the silent observer recording his every breath. Time for some rest, he muttered, collapsing onto the bunk. Silent activated the supplemental sensors and atmospheric monitors. The readings were stable for now. Marcus's vital signs fell into the deep slow-wave pattern of restorative sleep. Heart rate declined, breathing slowed, and neural oscillations dropped into their characteristic rhythmic undulations. And then it began. A subtle tremor shook the floor panels beneath Marcus's bunk. At first, imperceptible, it quickly amplified into a vibration that resonated through the station's metal framework. Silent's antennae twitched. The primary coolant conduit, C19, was exhibiting abnormal oscillations. If the frequency aligned with the conduit's natural resonance, it could rupture, sending thousands of liters of supercooled liquid across the engineering deck. Marcus's body responded instinctively. Micro-adjustments in his circulatory system increased blood pressure slightly. Respiratory patterns shifted and neural activity momentarily spiked. A subtle, subconscious reaction to a threat he could not perceive. Fascinating, Silent murmured, documenting the correlation. Even in sleep, the human system compensates for external threats. But the vibrations intensified. A feedback loop formed between the conduit and the station's magnetic clamps. Within minutes, the C19 conduit approached its critical threshold. If Marcus's body remained in deep sleep, his lack of voluntary motor responses would leave him helpless to any nearby environmental hazards. Silent's instincts screamed at him to intervene. He had learned the human body's incredible capacity for autonomous recovery, but now, external danger compounded the internal stress. Any misstep could trigger a simultaneous collapse of both station and human. He accessed the auxiliary override systems. Automated microjolts, supplemental oxygen bursts, and nanosecond adjustments to room temperature were deployed in sequence, designed to mimic natural physiological corrections without awakening Marcus. The room's air shimmered with subtle flows of controlled turbulence as Silent's interventions balanced the delicate equilibrium. Hours stretched on. Marcus's vitals wavered. The neural oscillations surged unpredictably. Heart rate dipped dangerously low, then spiked. Breathing became shallow and irregular. Silent's layered eyes tracked every microvariation, adjusting interventions in real time. One miscalculation and Marcus would awaken, or worse, fail entirely. Then came the anomaly. A sudden spike in the conduit's vibration frequency coincided with a rare neural surge in Marcus's brain. The two events aligned perfectly, creating a dangerous resonance. Silent's internal hum rose to a sharp, alarming pitch. This is beyond expected parameters, he whispered. The human system and the station are in synchronous instability. Failure is imminent. He had mere seconds to act. Deploying a controlled electrical stimulus to Marcus's heart could stabilize his pulse, but might disrupt neural oscillations and wake him. Adjusting the station's coolant flow manually could reduce the resonance, but one misalignment could rupture the conduit. Time slowed to a crawl. Silent's slender hands danced across the medbay console, coordinating interventions with precise calculations. The oxygen dispenser pulsed in synchronization with Marcus's breath. Temperature controls adjusted in microsecond intervals. Auxiliary power rerouted to dampen vibrations along the conduit. The station shuddered. Panels rattled. Lights flickered. Marcus's vitals hovered at the edge of systemic collapse, a delicate balance between life and death, rest and catastrophe. And then, Marcus twitched. A small hand moved slightly, fingers curling. Silent sensors detected micromuscular responses. Marcus's body reacting autonomously to external stress. His cardiac rhythm stabilized just enough. Respiratory depth increased. Neural oscillations shifted, absorbing the anomaly's energy. Silent allowed himself the briefest sigh of relief. But the crisis was not over. The vibration persisted, threatening the integrity of the quantum array. Marcus's unconscious movements, while remarkable, could not alone stabilize the station indefinitely. He accessed the station's auxiliary dampeners, customized devices he had installed during previous human observation cycles. Each dampener emitted counterfrequencies designed to cancel the conduit's resonance. Microseconds mattered. The wrong timing could amplify the vibration instead of quelling it. Silent deployed the dampeners one by one, adjusting emission frequencies in real time. The conduits shivered violently, then gradually stabilized. Marcus's body mirrored the recovery, vitals returning to nominal ranges. Minutes passed. Marcus remained in deep sleep, undisturbed. The conduit's oscillations dropped below critical levels. Neural oscillations, heart rate, and respiration settled into predictable, steady patterns. Silent's hum returned to its calm baseline, a deep, meditative resonance. He documented the event meticulously. Humans, he realized, were even more remarkable than he had suspected. Their sleep cycles allowed for survival under extreme conditions. Systemic near failure combined with autonomous corrections, subconscious vigilance, and incredible resilience. This is adaptation beyond comprehension, he whispered. A species that rehearses death nightly, yet emerges whole and functional. Vulnerable, yet invincible. When Marcus finally awoke hours later, the station's lights dimmed to standard operational levels. He stretched and yawned, unaware of the near catastrophe that had occurred. "Wow. I slept like a rock," he muttered, rubbing his eyes. Silen's antennae twitched in observation. "It is not mere rest," he replied softly. "It is rehearsal, recovery, and resilience. You survive because you willingly surrender control, trusting your systems to restore you." Marcus blinked. Okay? I just sleep." "No," Silent corrected. "You survive. You endure. And every night, you demonstrate a process no other species could withstand." Marcus chuckled, oblivious. "Well, I guess humans are pretty weird like that." Silent recorded the final annotations for the night. The human had survived extreme systemic stress, both internally induced and externally imposed. The station remained operational. The quantum communications array was intact. But Silent knew this was only a prelude. Humans, he realized, were capable of far more than any simulation or theory could predict. Their biology, behavior, and resilience defied the strictest logic of his species. "This is not just survival," he whispered to himself. "This is mastery through vulnerability. This is humanity." He stood over Marcus's bunk for a moment longer, marveling at the peaceful rise and fall of the chest, the gentle twitching of fingers, the unconscious microcorrections that allowed survival against near-impossible odds. For the Zilorians, this was more than observation. It was revelation. Humans had evolved not merely to endure, but to thrive under conditions that would defeat any other species. They were fragile and unbreakable, ordinary and extraordinary, a paradox that would occupy Silent's study for the rest of his existence. And tonight, as Marcus returned to sleep once more, Silent would remain vigilant. Because even when humans rested, danger never truly slept, and neither could he. Weeks passed in the hum of Erebor Station, yet a tension hung in the corridors like a latent storm. Silent had learned to respect the human's unconscious resilience, but nothing could prepare him for what came next. A deep space anomaly had been detected near the station, a rogue subspace wave, chaotic and unpredictable, moving directly along the station's flight vector. If it collided with Erebor, the energy discharge would tear through structural conduits, fry the communications array, and destabilize life support. Emergency protocols were activated, but there was a complication. Marcus was scheduled for his nightly regenerative sleep. Silent reviewed the scenario with methodical precision. Humans were fragile during deep sleep. Any external trauma could overwhelm their systems. Marcus's unconscious body could not withstand a sudden shock without immediate intervention. And yet, the human's very vulnerability, his willingness to relinquish control, was also a source of adaptive potential. The subspace wave hit Erebor's sensors first, a violent distortion in the gravitational readings. Panels flickered, lights dimmed, and emergency sirens wailed. Marcus, lying on his bunk, remained unaware, immersed in the slow rhythm of sleep. Silent's hum escalated into a sharp, resonant pitch, echoing urgency through the medbay. "Primary conduits will fail in T-60 seconds, he calculated, eyes flicking across overlays of Marcus's vitals and structural schematics. If his systems falter, the station collapses. Silent acted with precision honed over countless human observation cycles. Auxiliary dampeners engaged immediately. Pressure regulators adjusted conduits' tolerances in micro-increments. Oxygen dispensers pulsed in rhythm with Marcus's heart, subtly countering the stress imposed by the shockwaves propagating through the station. The first pulse of the subspace wave hit. Panels rattled violently. Marcus's vitals spiked briefly, the autonomic nervous system responding, neurons firing in chaotic bursts. Then came the second pulse, stronger, more erratic. The station groaned. Silent's layered eyes flicked between the conduit vibrations and Marcus's neural oscillations. He realized the human body was doing something extraordinary, involuntary micro-adjustments that were stabilizing internal systems in real time. Silent's internal hum shifted from tense alarm to a controlled cadence. Humans, he now understood, had evolved not just to endure vulnerability but to exploit it. Marcus's unconscious state allowed neural and circulatory systems to react without conscious delay, executing corrections Silent's species could not emulate even with predictive computation. But the subspace wave was relentless. A third pulse struck with catastrophic potential, targeting the station's engineering deck. Conduits threatened to rupture. Cooling systems oscillated dangerously. The quantum array was at risk of total collapse. Marcus's body responded in ways Silent could barely comprehend. Heart rate stabilized despite systemic stress. Respiratory patterns synchronized with conduit vibrations, absorbing energy and dissipating it across the body. Neural oscillations surged in short bursts, mimicking alert consciousness while maintaining deep sleep. Every microaction was survival, calculated instinctively by a species that rehearsed death nightly. Silent realized that Marcus's sleep was not passive. It was a state of extreme vigilance, an unconscious mastery of biology. Humans had engineered resilience not through armor or technology, but through surrender, through the paradoxical act of becoming simultaneously fragile and indomitable. Minutes stretched. Sweat beaded along Marcus's brow. Conduits shivered, the station groaned. Silent's layered hands hovered over the medbay console, prepared to intervene at any misstep. Yet with each passing second, Marcus's system held firm, absorbing, adapting, correcting. Then came the climax, the subspace wave's fourth pulse, the one that would have shattered the station's primary conduits. Marcus's body convulsed slightly, a reflexive response. The dampeners and auxiliary systems Silent had deployed resonated with the unconscious microadjustments of the human physiology. The two forces, alien engineering and human biology, synchronized in perfect opposition to the anomaly. The station shuddered violently. Lights flickered. A panel near the engineering deck exploded in a shower of sparks. But the conduits held. Marcus's vitals, though strained, stabilized. The pulse passed. Silent's hum returned to its calm baseline, a resonant echo of relief. For a moment there was silence. Marcus remained asleep, chest rising and falling in measured rhythm. The station, battered but intact, continued its quiet hum. Silence stood over him, awe evident in his movements. "Your species is impossible," he murmured. "Every system that should fail, every protocol that predicts collapse, you survive. You endure. And you do so voluntarily every night without thought, without planning." Marcus stirred. Eyes fluttered open, blurry at first. "Whoa, weird dream," he muttered. "I think I was flying a spaceship made of cheese, or maybe fixing a coolant leak?" Silent's layered eyes narrowed, incredulous. "You were asleep during a near-catastrophic subspace event, and yet, you survived. Your system adapted unconsciously to life-threatening environmental stress." Marcus yawned, stretching his arms. "Oh well, I just sleep. Helps me not die, I guess." Silent tilted his head. "Not just survival," he said, voice low. "You turn vulnerability into power. You teach resilience through unconscious mastery. I have studied countless species, yet none match this human paradox." Marcus laughed softly, oblivious to the magnitude of what had occurred. "Paradox, huh? Guess humans are weird like that." But Silent understood. Humans were fragile yet indestructible, reckless yet calculated, ordinary yet extraordinary. Their biology, culture, and evolution had converged to create a species that could endure extreme vulnerability with astonishing efficacy. He documented every detail. The subspace anomaly's energy, the station's structural response, Marcus's autonomous physiological adjustments, all catalogued for analysis. Humanity, he realized, was a lesson in adaptability, a living example of what it meant to survive against impossible odds. As Marcus finally rose from the bunk, rubbing his eyes and stretching limbs still stiff from deep sleep, Silent remained vigilant, yet at peace. The crisis had passed, and the human had emerged unscathed. "Doc," Marcus said, glancing at the alien, "thanks for, whatever all that was. I think I just slept through saving the station again." Silent allowed a hint of warmth in his layered voice. "It is not you alone who saved the station. Your unconscious system coordinated with my interventions, creating a synergy of biology and technology. Humanity is remarkable." Marcus grinned, still half asleep. "Well, a human's gotta keep some surprises up their sleeves even if we're unconscious, right?" Silent's hum resonated softly, almost contemplatively. "Indeed. And I will study you forever and still find surprises. Your species defines what it means to endure, to adapt, and to survive. Not through armor, not through weapons, but through the mastery of your own fragile, extraordinary biology." Hours later, the station returned to routine operations. Marcus worked at the engineering console, repairing minor damage from the subspace anomaly. Silent resumed his nightly rounds, monitoring systems and observing Marcus's sleep cycles with newfound reverence. Humanity had proven once more that life in the void was more than survival. It was a testament to resilience, ingenuity, and the audacity to rest in the face of danger. Silent reflected on what he had witnessed. The species that rehearsed death nightly, yet emerged unbroken. the biology that could absorb chaos and convert it to life, the paradox that made humans both vulnerable and unstoppable. In the dark corridors of Erebor Station, under the faint hum of life support and the glittering stars beyond, Cylon understood a truth no simulation could teach. Humans were extraordinary simply because they dared to sleep, to surrender, and yet always return, alive, resilient, and defiant. And as the stars streaked past in silent motion, he whispered to the quiet station, "They survive, and nothing will ever teach me the limits of humanity."